You are listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report, episode number 213.2. The Indianapolis Star's outstanding high school sports reporter, Kyle Neddenriep, recaps Jeffersonville's semi-state championship at Newcastle. Kyle and I also talk about the state finals matchups coming up this Saturday at the Fieldhouse in Indianapolis.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengel.
Kyle, you and I sometimes have a stressful job, and the pay is crap. But does anybody have more fun at their jobs than we do?
The game days are fun.
They sure are. Tell me about Saturday, Jeffersonville's first semi-state since 1995. That's hard to believe.
It felt like last year they sort of, definitely put themselves on the radar by coming as close as they did, and had a chance to see them in the summer, playing in June ball, and was kind of revisiting that today. Writing for tomorrow about that because they did play Fishers in that tournament at the Charlie Hughes and beat them. But Fishers was without John Anthony Hall, one of their main players who was on a recruiting visit for football that day or that weekend. So, they weren't at full strength, and, really summer results don't matter much at this point. But, at the same time, I think people know, Jeffersonville may be that one team that could, match up with Fishers in some ways. And
Yeah.
I think that'll make for a great matchup.
Yeah, we've been saying since the beginning we thought Fishers was the best in the South, and Jeffersonville or Lawrence North would probably be the best in the North, and Jeffersonville and Lawrence North in the South, and turned out to be just that way. And yeah, you're right. There's no team that can match up talent wise with Fishers like Jeffersonville can, especially the top three players.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw that yesterday with, Mount Vernon really on the ropes. There was 6:14 left in that opening game, or I guess it was actually the second game, but the opening round of games there at Newcastle, and it was starting to look like Mount Vernon was about to almost close the door. I mean, there was still, kind of thinking back to that, there were 6:14 left, and Mount Vernon's up 9, and Jeff called the timeout, and Mount Vernon fans were just, not that they thought it was over, but you could kind of start feeling that way. And Jeff went to, they went to their big guy, and Singleton kind of took things over in a lot of ways. He started guarding Ertl, which was pretty amazing to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a huge turn in the game. Ertl only scored 2 points, and from basically the rest of the game forward at that, and Mount Vernon could not score. They and it wasn't all Singleton, but they missed shots, and he was playing more aggressive on offense. He was in some foul trouble for a while, so he kind of had to take the foot off the pedal. But once he got going, man, it was he's really hard to stop, and I thought he made a huge impact on both sides of the court. But really, Michael Cooper played great. PJ Douglas didn't have the biggest statistical game, but he's always a real threat. He played well. And then Terrence Nord, you have to tip your cap to that kid because he hit a 3 from the corner to put him ahead, and he hadn't shot the ball. That was the only shot he took against Mount Vernon. And he's not a big scorer necessarily, but I talked to him after the game, and he said, Trey always tells me, like, be confident, and sometimes I struggle with confidence, and he couldn't have taken a more confident shot. So those stories are always cool too, to see, like, a kid step up who hasn't, no one knows his name other than his teammates probably. So
Well, it's a very familiar name in Jeffersonville.
Yeah, and he's only, he scores what, 5 points a game,
Mhm.
but to be able to do that in that moment, Sharon talked after the game about that, like, hey, I told him that was the biggest shot of our season, and it wasn't from one of the 3 guys who do 80% of the scoring for him. So that's what it takes sometimes to win a championship, and that was really cool for him, I thought, to have that moment.
And then Mount Vernon to go beat number 2, number 5. And then really, you said they had a 9-point lead with 6 minutes to go. 95% of all high school games, it's over at that moment. So what a season for Mount Vernon.
Yeah, it really was. And it felt like, the magic just kind of ran out a little bit. They had, they had 4 chances, 44 seconds left. They were down by, down by 3 and had 4 shots from the 3-point line, and they were all, off, obviously, and they were all decent looks. I mean, one of them, Elijah Parra shot, I thought for sure was going in. It looked like it was, kind of went off the back of the rim, but yeah, I mean, they just could not hit anything. And credit Jeff, and I think Mount Vernon maybe, hit the wall just a little bit too. Ertl had done so much for him. He had 27 at the end of the third quarter, and just he really carried that team to a large degree, and he had some great teammates too. But Tyler Davis, they're big. He the real athletic 6'6" senior. He fouled out with about 5 minutes left, and that definitely played a factor too. So just kind of one of those things. And I was telling people, it's like a lot of people were picking Jeff, and I did too. I picked him to win the semi-state, but I was like, man, I felt like Mount Vernon was like a 50-50 shot almost, and
Right.
it kind of played out that way.
And then Lawrence North, I guess most people would probably call it a bit of a disappointing season, but they ended up in the Final Four. It's hard to be too disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like this was a better season, to finish out than they had last year. They led Jeff in the semi-state last year in the first game, or the semifinal game, and kind of let that one get away. It kind of felt like Jeff took it, but it felt like Ellen kind of gave it away a little bit too. And then I think people thought, or I thought, Ellen was going to play Ben Davis last year, for the chance to go to the state finals, and I thought LN might be the better team last year. But this year I felt like they were actually playing their best basketball now, and they were a team that, when they put it all together and played really well, like they were at the end of the year, like they were right up there with Jeff and Fisher. Maybe not quite up there with Fisher's, but they were a team I thought that maybe could beat Jeff on their best day.
Yeah.
Like I said, I picked Jeff, but I felt like Lawrence North's size and and Robinson, and the only thing they're sort of missing that Jeffersonville has is their outside shooting can kind of really come and go, and I feel like with Cooper and Douglas and some of the other guys too, they can, they're pretty good from three. So that, and it didn't really play out that way. I think Jeff just kind of took it to him in the early going there, and LN was kind of playing from behind, and they did get it down to 3. But couldn't quite get over the hump. But honestly, I feel like the end of this year felt like LN should be happy with kind of how they played at the end of the year,
Yeah.
and it doesn't feel as disappointing as it did last year.
Yeah, and I think at a certain point in the middle of this season, they were ranked third in the state coming in. They took some disappointing losses, but in the end, like I said, if you make the Final Four, it's hard to be too disappointing.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and their draw, they benefit. They got Terre Haute North. They played really well in the early game, and there's a bright future there with, even though they'll lose Xavier Robinson, pretty much everybody else in the main rotation is back, assuming they all come back. But, that's a team that's going to be a problem next year for a lot of people. And I think that's something to look forward to as well. But yeah, I agree. They're in the middle of the year, and they didn't even make the Marion County semifinals.
that's
They
right.
lost to Warren in a game I covered. And I was like, man, they're just, I'm not sure, they're going to put it all together, but yeah, towards the end of the stretch, and the sectional played well and continued that on. So, but yeah, pretty good ending for them, even though they lost that game.
Other than Fishers and Jeff, which other game are you looking forward to most Saturday?
Well, it's kind of going through what happened yesterday. And I'm surprised University, a little bit surprised that they were able to get all the way through and win down at Washington, and I kind of thought that might be Park Heritage turn to make it, but yeah, University. I was surprised by that, and I think that'll be an interesting game against Manchester, which I'm sure they're going to bring. It looked like they really showed out at Michigan City, so I'm assuming they're going to bring a ton of people
The entire
down.
town of North Manchester will be there.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. And then Orleans is cool too. I was down there a
Oh,
couple years ago, and talking to Tom Bradley, their coach there for a long time. They had, man, what a day! Their day was yesterday. It was like
crazy.
just 2 games that just were insane. So they got to be on cloud 9 right now. But yeah, that'll be fun to see. To see them, come in here and get that opportunity, for the first time to do that. But I think the Addicts South Bend St. Joe game will be awesome. I mean, I think that'll be up and down and,
Mm, no
lots of,
doubt.
lots of highlights and, everything like that. So I think that'll be a fun one too. But yeah, I think all these games have some, have some good matchups, and I'm curious what the crowd is like for the 4A game. I think that could be, with Jeff, I think will bring a lot of people.
Yes.
Fishers has been, Fishers fans have been on that bandwagon for a while. So you got some undefeated team trying to finish it out and continue their winning streak against a team that hasn't been there in a long time. So that 4A game should be pretty rocking, I would think, Saturday night.
And no one deserves it more than Tom Bradley, as you mentioned. Unfortunately for them, they come from probably the most competitive sectional in the entire state every year. And
Yep.
as great as they are, it's hard to even get out of their sectional with Bar Reeve and Lagodi and North Davies all in the same sectional. So really happy for them.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it seemed like they always had their path blocked by Bar Reaver Lagodi, like you said, and it was a five overtime game last year that knocked them out in the sectional championship game.
That's
So
right.
they've been close. This was a good year for in Clay City, man. I know this was their dream. I had been down there this season to do a story on them, and to be that close and not do it's got to just be killing them too. But cool for Orleans, and only one team can make it there, and would have been a good story either way. So but yeah, looking forward to seeing how they do, and I'm sure they'll show up in full force as well. So yeah, some of these community, like those are cool stories, of like Manchester and Orleans making it. I
Clinton
think those are
Prairie.
Clinton Prairie's another. Yeah, they're going to bring a ton, and they haven't done this either. They haven't even won a sectional since I think it was 82 or 83. So
Right.
it had been a long, long time for them. So yeah, some pretty cool stories when you see some different teams get into.
Thank you so much for Kyle. He is absolutely the best at what he does, and we appreciate his time. And thank you for listening. If you are interested in seeing the Central Indiana Sports Report continue to grow and thrive, please share these segments with your friends and family. We thank you in advance. That was a really good one, Susie.
It was a really good one.
Really nice of Kyle to come on and do that.
It's always great to hear from him.
It is. Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media. And I love Susie.